The music was still playing a soft hum beneath the chatter of guests who lingered in the reception hall, their laughter blending with the clinking of champagne glasses. The air smelled of roses and vanilla from the towering wedding cake. And everywhere I turned, people smiled, toasting to my supposed happiness. But I wasn't happy. Not anymore, because in that one moment, my entire world shifted. I had stepped away from the dance floor for just a second, the fabric of my wedding dress trailing behind me like a ghost. The night had been overwhelming, so much excitement, so much love, or at least that's what I thought. But fate has a cruel way of revealing truths when you least expect them. As I turned the corner behind one of the floral arches adjusting my veil, I heard a voice that made my stomach tighten. "You could do better than her," was Liam, my stepbrother. His voice was low, laced with amusement, but it carried clearly in the quiet hallway. My pulse quickened, the words felt like a slap, but before I could process them, another voice answered, my husband. The man I had just vowed to spend my life with. He chuckled. Not an uncomfortable, dismissive laugh, not a forced one. No, this was easy, Nadal-like, he agreed. "I know, man," Ethan replied, his tone light as if they were discussing something as trivial as the weather. "But what can you do, right?" My breath caught in my throat. The bouquet in my hands trembled. The warmth of the reception hall suddenly felt suffocating, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. My fingers curled around the delicate petals of the roses, crushing them slightly. My wedding night. My husband, and this, I should have stormed in. I should have demanded answers. I should have screamed, but I didn't. Instead, I stood frozen. My body betraying me, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. Liam laughed softly. "Well, at least you locked her down. That's all that matters, right? She's naive. He actually loves you. You've got her right where you want her." Ethan hummed in agreement. "Yeah, she won't be going anywhere." I felt something inside me snap. I had loved Ethan truly deeply. I had trusted him, believed in him, supported him through everything in Liam. He had always been cruel to me, always trying to tear me down. But this was something else. This was calculated, deliberate. And Ethan had let it happen, no. He had participated in it. A part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to walk into that hallway and watch their expressions shift when they saw me standing there listening. But then a different thought settled in, a dangerous, thrilling thought. They thought I wouldn't go anywhere. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was naive. I almost laughed at how foolish they were. I took a step back carefully, making sure not to make a sound. I had to be composed. I had to be smart if they thought they had one. If they believed I was helpless, I would let them, because the game had just begun. I made my way back to the ballroom, my face neutral, my emotions locked, walked away beneath a mask of practiced smiles. People continued to dance, unaware that in the span of mere minutes, I had gone from being a woman celebrating love to one quietly plotting revenge. I turned, scanning the crowd, my gaze finally landing on Ethan. He looked radiant under the golden lights, laughing at something his groomsmen said. And Liam, he was right beside him, grinning as if he hadn't just torn me apart with his words. I forced myself to breathe. The betrayal stopped, but I refused to let it show. Instead, I walked toward them, my hands steady, my chin lifted. Ethan turned to me, his smile wide, his eyes twinkling with the kind of ease that only comes when you think you're untouchable. "There's my beautiful wife," he said, reaching for my hand. I let him take it because tonight I would play the role of the devoted, unsuspecting wife. I would let him think he had one, but tomorrow the game would change. The reception carried on, the hours passing in a blur of forced laughter and empty conversations when it was finally time for Ethan and me to leave. I walked out of that venue with a quiet determination burning inside me. He held my hand all the way to the car, unaware that the warmth in my touch had already turned to ice as we drove off, leaving the grand hall behind. I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur together. My mind raced, formulating possibilities, strategies. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about Liam too. They had both underestimated me. That was their first mistake. Ethan squeezed my hand. "That was a perfect night," he murmured. I turned to him, forcing a soft smile. "Yes," I said, "perfect." You had no idea. By the time we reached the hotel suite, Ethan was relaxed, unwinding as if the night had been nothing more than a beautiful beginning to our lives together. He poured champagne, handed me a glass, kissed my forehead. But I didn't drink. I just watched him, studied him, memorized every move, every smug expression. It was fascinating, really, how easily people could lie, how effortlessly someone you loved could betray you and think they'd never be caught. Ethan went on about our honeymoon plans, his excitement evident. I listened, nodding at all the right moments, but inside I was thinking about how different his life would look once I was through with him. Because tomorrow, he would wake up to something he never saw coming. I lay beside him that night, my body still, my heart steady. Ethan slept easily, peacefully, while I remained awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind weaving together the perfect storm. He thought I was his. He thought I was trapped. But Ethan had just married the wrong woman, and by the time he realized it would be too late, the first morning of my marriage should have been filled with soft whispers, sleepy smiles, and the warmth of new beginnings. Instead, I woke up next to a man I could no longer recognize. Ethan's breathing was steady beside me, his face peaceful, as if he had not just hours ago mocked the woman he had promised to cherish. The irony of it all was irony, suffocating. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the previous night settle over me like a heavy, unshakable fog. The words he and Liam had exchanged played on repeat in my mind, each syllable slicing through my thoughts like a blade. You could do better than her. She's naive. You've got her right where you want her. I turned my head slightly, watching Ethan sleep. His expression was one of complete contentment, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beside him. He thought he had one. He believed his web of deceit was still intact. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that he had underestimated me in ways he would soon regret. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, my bare feet against the cool marble floor. The early morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a golden glow over the room. Everything was beautiful, picturesque, the kind of setting I had once imagined my first day as a wife would be. But now all I saw was a carefully crafted illusion, mirage that was already beginning to crack. I walked over to the vanity, my reflection staring back at me, unrecognizable. The girl in the mirror had gone to sleep, a bride, and woken up someone else entirely. Her eyes were sharper, her lips pressed into a firm line. There was no trace of love in her gaze, only cold determination. I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. I had work to do. Ethan stirred behind me, shifting under the covers. "Morning, beautiful," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. I turned, forcing a soft smile. "Morning," he stretched, yawning. "Last night was perfect, wasn't it?" His eyes met mine, warm, affectionate. "Why?" "A well-rehearsed act." I nodded. "Perfect. You had no idea how good I was at pretending." Ethan rolled out of bed, walking over to where I stood. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me into him, pressing a kiss to my temple. I let him. I needed him to believe nothing had changed, that I was still his naive, trusting wife. If he saw even a flicker of doubt in my eyes, everything I was planning would be ruined. "I was thinking we should have breakfast on the balcony," he suggested, his fingers brushing over my arm. "Just us, no more chaos, no more guests. Just you and me." How ironic, he wanted intimacy. Now, after what he had done, the thought made my stomach turn, but I smiled anyway. "That sounds nice." He kissed me once more before stepping away to grab his phone. As he scrolled through it, a slow smirk curved on his lips. "Liam's already up." He sent me a text saying he's still laughing about last night. I swallowed the anger that rose in my throat. Still laughing? Of course he was. Liam had spent years making a sport out of making me feel insignificant. Why would my wedding night be any different? I moved to my suitcase, pretending to look for something, my mind racing. I had spent the entire night plotting, running through every possible move I could make. I needed to be strategic, careful. Revenge was best served slowly with precision, and I intended to make every moment of this count. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my messages. Among them was one I had sent to myself at 3:00 a.m. When I couldn't sleep. Step 1, establish control. Ethan thought he had the upper hand, but I had leverage, real leverage. I had spent years listening, watching, absorbing every little detail about him, about Liam. And now all of it was going to come back to haunt them. He thought he had married a woman who would never leave, but I had already started paving my way out. Out the first step money, Ethan had always been careless about his finances. He trusted me enough to let me handle most of our joint accounts, and while I had never considered exploiting that before last night, had changed everything. He had built this marriage on deceit. Why should I play by the rules? While Ethan showered, I opened my laptop and got to work. I transferred small amounts, nothing too noticeable, into a separate account, a safety net. This was going to end. It was going to end on my terms. I closed the laptop just as Ethan walked out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist. "You coming?" he asked, running a hand through his damp hair. I smiled. "I'll be right there." As soon as he was gone, I exhaled slowly. Step 1 complete over breakfast. Ethan was all charm. He talked about our future, our plans, completely oblivious to the fact that I was memorizing every word, filing them away. For later, I played the role of the adoring wife to perfection. Every laugh, every affectionate glance. I delivered it flawlessly. He had no idea the foundation beneath him was already crumbling. Halfway through our meal, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, smirked, and set it down without responding. "Liam wants to grab drinks later." I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. "You two really are close, huh?" Ethan grinned. "Always have been, HK. Like a brother to me." I forced a laugh. "More than me," Ethan chuckled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Different kind of bond, that was all I needed to hear. I finished my coffee, setting my cup down with a quiet clink. "You should go," I said, keeping my voice light. "Celebrate." Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching me. "You're okay with that?" I nodded. "Of course you should enjoy yourself." He didn't need to know. I had already set things in motion that night as Ethan and Liam clinked their glasses together, revving in their misplaced confidence. I was making phone calls. I had information, real damaging information, and it was about to see the light of day. Liam had a lot of skeletons, had even more, and soon they would both realize just how dangerous it was to underestimate me. As I closed my laptop, I allowed myself a small smile. They thought I was a fool. They had no idea. By the time they figured it out, it would be too late. I watched the night unfold through my phone screen, scrolling through the images Liam had just posted there. They were Ethan and Liam, drinks in hand, laughing like kings in a world that had never once told them no. They looked so at ease, so confident in their control over everything, including me. A slow smile played on my lips. Confidence was a dangerous thing, made people blind. It made them underestimate the quiet ones, the observers, the people who listened instead of spoke. Ethan had spent years believing I was just his shadow, someone who followed, someone who adored, someone who would never dare to disrupt the perfect little kingdom he had built for himself. He was wrong. I leaned back on the hotel bed, my fingers tightening around my phone as I read the messages between Ethan and Liam, ones I had pulled from Ethan's cloud. Earlier that evening, they were careless, so painfully careless. The same man who had once whispered sweet promises into my ear was now laughing at me in texts, calling me predictable, easy to manipulate. Liam, of course, encouraged it, as if my feelings were nothing more than an afterthought. "She's too in love to ever leave." That was what Ethan had written just 2 weeks before our wedding. I closed my eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. Anger was a tempting thing, but I needed to be smarter than that. Reckless revenge would do nothing but make me look foolish now. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right, and that meant taking everything from Ethan piece by piece, the same way he had slowly taken my trust and turned it into a joke. The first crack had already formed with the small financial transfers I had made earlier that morning, but I needed more, something bigger, something that would shake him to his core. I opened a private folder on my phone and clicked on a video I had saved months ago, something I had nearly forgotten about. It was an old clip of Liam at a party, stumbling through a drunken rant about how Ethan wasn't nearly as loyal to me as I believed. At the time, I had brushed it off as another one of his mean-spirited jabs, but now it was evidence. I watched the video again, memorizing the slurred words. "Ethan. Oh, please, that guy could charm the teeth off a wolf. You think he's faithful. I've literally seen him leave bars with other girls, but hey, let's not tell his little princess, huh? She's too perfect to ruin with the truth perfect. The truth perfect was the word Liam had always used to describe me, but never as a compliment. It was an insult. A way to remind me that I was naive, that I believed in things they saw as weaknesses: love, loyalty, honesty. I exhaled sharply. This wasn't just about making Ethan feel the sting of betrayal. This was about making both of them realize that the girl they had spent years underestimating was done. Playing their game, Ethan's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He had left it there, assuming I wouldn't dare look at it. I did. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. Hope you made it back safe last night. Was fun, winky face. The breath left my lungs in a slow, controlled exhale. My fingers tightened around the device, but my face remained expressionless, so it wasn't just in the past. He was still doing it, still lying, still pretending. I placed the phone back exactly as it was and walked to the hotel bathroom, turning on the faucet to mask the sound of my breathing. The R threatened to bubble over, but I swallowed it down, forcing my mind to focus. Ian thought I was blind. Liam thought I was weak. They were about to find out just how wrong they were by the time Ethan stumbled back into the suite. Later that night, I was already in bed facing away from him. I felt the bed shift as he climbed in beside me, his hand briefly touching my shoulder before he hesitated. Still awake, his voice was low, careful. I kept my breathing even, making him think I was asleep. He let out a quiet sigh, rolling onto his back. "Love you," he murmured. The words meant nothing now. The next morning, I moved carefully, methodically. I made breakfast. I smiled. I kissed his cheek. He had no idea that I had spent the early hours of dawn setting the stage for his downfall. I sent the video of Liam's drunken confession to an anonymous email account. From there, it would be distributed strategically to a few close friends, a few colleagues, and eventually someone who mattered. I wasn't going to release everything at once. No, I wanted to watch as the foundation beneath them started to shake. Little by little, Ethan left for a meeting completely oblivious. Liam, on the other hand, was already texting, asking if Ethan had seen the weird message someone had sent him. Not yet, I thought. But he will. I spent the afternoon carefully laying out the next phase. Ethan had always been cautious with his image, obsessed with how people perceived him. That was his weakness. If I could make him feel like the world was starting to doubt him, he would panic, and panicked people made mistakes. I made sure a few anonymous messages found their way to his office, hinting at infidelity rumors. The video of Liam, that was just the beginning, because what neither of them knew was that I had more texts, more receipts, more proof, and I wasn't just going to expose Ethan's betrayal. I was going to make sure that when everything fell apart, Liam went down with him. By the time Ethan came home, that evening, something had shifted. His usual confident stride was tighter. His was eyes scanning me carefully. "Did you hear from Liam today?" he asked casually, pouring himself a drink. I took a sip of my tea, meeting his gaze with practiced innocence. Know why he hesitated, swirling the glass in his hand. Nothing, just some weird messages going around. Someone sent him something about me. I frowned, tilting my head. That's strange. He studied me for a long moment before forcing a chuckle. Yeah, probably nothing, I smiled. Probably Ethan had spent years believing he could play me like a fool. He had no idea I was the one moving the pieces now. And soon he'd have no game left to play. Ethan's fingers drummed against the counter, his grip tightening around his glass. The flickering light above the kitchen cast sharp shadows across his face, highlighting the tension etched into his features. I sipped my tea calmly, meeting his wary gaze with practiced ease. "Did you see anything unusual today?" he asked, his voice laced with something that almost sounded like concern. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. Unusual. Should I have? His jaw clenched, the faintest flicker of doubt crossing his eyes. Just some weird messages. Nothing serious, I hummed, setting my cup down. Well, if it's nothing serious, why do you look so tense? He forced a chuckle, shaking his head. I don't, just tired. I guess liar. I could see the tiny fractures forming the beginning of his world. Slowly unraveling, he wasn't panicking, not yet. but he was starting to sense something was off. I was good. I didn't want him to crumble too quickly. I wanted to watch him squirm, to feel the weight of uncertainty press down on him like an invisible noose the next morning. I woke up to hushed voices in the hallway. Ethan's tone was sharp, laced with frustration. I didn't need to hear every word to know he was talking to Liam. I swung my legs over the bed, slipping into my robe before stepping into the doorway. Ethan stood near the window, his back to me, foam pressed to his ear. I don't know where it came from, Liam. That's the problem. His fingers raked through his hair. What do you mean? It doesn't matter. Of course it matters if someone has this. What else do they have? I leaned against the frame, my voice soft. Everything, okay? Ethan stiffened, turning sharply. His expression flickered between surprise and something else. Guilt, maybe? I kept my face neutral, waiting. He ended the call abruptly, forcing a smile. Yeah, just work stuff on a Sunday morning. I raised an eyebrow. His laugh was forced. You know how it is, I did. I knew exactly how it was over the next few days. The tension in our house became palpable. Ethan was distracted, his phone glued to his hand more than usual. Every time he thought I wasn't looking, I saw the flickers of worry dance across his face. And Liam, he was unraveling faster. The first time I saw the panic hit him was at a dinner party Ethan had planned. A desperate attempt to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. I played along, smiling, laughing, keeping up the ACT. While Ethan kept shooting discreet glances at his phone, Liam arrived late. His usual arrogant confidence dimmed. His eyes darted around the room as if expecting someone to corner him. When he finally reached our table, he yanked Ethan aside. I followed at a distance, staying just close enough to hear. This is bad, man. Liam muttered, his voice sharp. Whoever sent that video knew what they were doing. People are talking. Ethan's face darkened. Keep your voice down. Liam exhaled harshly, shaking his head. We need to find out who's behind this. I smiled to myself. Lee, you already know, don't you? Their paranoia was spreading and I was feeding it little by little, small carefully placed rumors. Anonymous messages, just enough breadcrumbs to make them wonder, to make them question everything, and then I made my next move. One night when Ethan was asleep, I unlocked his laptop with the passcode. He never thought I would remember. I scrolled through his emails, searching for anything useful. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. An email thread between Ethan and a woman whose name I didn't recognize. I clicked it open. The messages were recent, too. Recent, can't stop thinking about last weekend. Wish we had more time alone. You looked so beautiful when you left. When can I see you again? I stared at the words, my pulse steady. I had suspected it for a while now, but having proof in front of me made something inside me settle into place. There was no sadness, no heartbreak, just confirmation of what I had already known. I took screenshots, sending them to myself, before deleting all traces of what I had done when I shut the laptop. I turned to look at Ethan's sleeping form. He had no idea the next morning I sat across from him at breakfast. Watching as he scrolled through his phone, he looked exhausted, the weight of his paranoia finally settling in. You seem stressed, I said lightly. He forced a laugh. Just work and Liam's freaking out. Oh, I poured myself another cup of coffee. Why would Liam be freaking out? Ethan hesitated. It's nothing, just some rumors. I tilted my head. Rumors about what? He glanced up, studying me, as if trying to gauge how much I knew. I met his gaze, evenly offering nothing, Nelly. He shook his head. It's not important, if only he knew. That evening I sent the screenshots to Liam, not with a message, not with an explanation, just the images, letting him interpret them however he wanted. The response was almost immediate. Liam, what the hell is this? I didn't reply. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. 30 minutes later. Ethan stormed into the room, his face a mask of barely contained rage. What did you do? His voice was tight, controlled. I set my book down, looking up at him. What are you talking about? His phone shook in his hand. Liam just sent me something that was sent to him. I raised an eyebrow and he clenched his jaw, and someone is messing with us. I stared at him for a long moment, then let out a soft laugh. Messing with you? Ethan, you've been lying to me for years. Why would you assume someone else is the problem? His eyes darkened. You think this is funny? I stood walking toward him slowly. No, Ethan. I think this is overdue. His expression flickered. Anger, realization, fear you? He whispered. I smiled. His entire body tensed, as if he finally understood that the woman standing in front of him wasn't the same one he had married. I leaned in slightly. You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought I wouldn't fight back. But Ethan, darling, I let my voice drop, my smile widening. You should have known better, and just like that, his world tilted on its axis. Because he knew, really knew, that he was about to lose everything. Ethan stood there, his hands gripping his phone so tightly, I half expected it to shatter. His eyes flickered with a whirlwind of emotions, anger, disbelief, and beneath it all, a creeping sense of fear. He had spent years thinking he was in control, that I was just a piece on his chessboard, a pawn too blind to notice. She was being moved, but now he was realizing the truth. The game had flipped, and I was the one holding the pieces. I watched the realization settle over him, a slow and painful process, like watching a man trying to outrun an avalanche, only to realize he was standing directly in its path. You set me up, he said. Finally, his voice, hollow as if he couldn't quite believe it, I tilted my head, allowing a small knowing smile. Set you up, Beau. Ethan, I simply gave you exactly what you deserved. His jaw clenched, his breathing shallow. He took a step closer, and for the first time, I saw something in his expression that had never been there before. Powerlessness, the very thing he had spent his life avoiding. You don't understand what you've done, he said, his voice low like a man on the edge of a cliff, grasping for solid ground. I let out a soft chuckle. Oh, Ethan, I said, shaking my head. I understand perfectly. The weight of my words hung between us, thick and suffocating. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He knew that whatever control he once had over me was gone, shattered beyond repair. A loud vibration against the countertop broke the silence, his phone, another message. He glanced at it, and for a second his face paled. I stepped forward, peering over his shoulder just enough to see the preview of the message. It was from an unknown number, but I already knew what it was. Anonymous. Hope your wife didn't see the rest of the messages. That would be unfortunate. Ethan's hand hovered over the screen, as if touching it would somehow make the problem disappear. But problems like these didn't disappear. They grew, spreading like wildfire, consuming everything in their path. He turned to me sharply. What did you do? I met his gaze, my expression calm, controlled. I simply told the truth. His breathing was UN. Even now. Panic slipping through the cracks of his once perfect composure, he ran a hand over his face, pacing the length of the room, muttering something under his breath. Then suddenly he stopped. His head snapped up. Liam, he whispered, his eyes locked onto mine, the pieces clicking together in his mind. Liam knew, didn't he? That's why, heck, panicking, I didn't respond. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. He was in on this. That traitor. I cut him off with a soft, amused voice. Oh, Ethan, you still don't get it, do you? He narrowed his eyes. Get what? I took my time. Stepping around him, making sure he felt the weight of every second, the tension curling between us like an invisible rope tightening around his throat. Then I leaned in just enough so that he had no choice but to listen. This was never just about you, I whispered. Ethan's entire body went rigid. He blinked, processing my words, and when they finally sank in, I saw it, the realization, the sheer depth of what I had done. It wasn't just about exposing him. It was about destroying the foundation beneath him, their business, their friendships, everything they had built together, every lie they had told. Every time they had laughed at my expense, I had dismantled it all piece by piece. His breathing quickened, his gaze darting to his phone again as if expecting another blow to land. Maybe it would. You don't know what you've done, he muttered again, but this time, the words held no conviction. I smiled, tilting my head slightly. Oh, I know exactly what I've done. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I could see the war raging inside him. He wanted to fight back. He wanted to regain control. But there was nothing left for him to hold on to. Then the phone rang. Ethan hesitated, then finally answered what he snapped. I watched, arms crossed, as his face twisted into something I had never seen before, real, unfiltered. Panic. "What do you mean it's everywhere?" he hissed. "No, I don't know who leaked it. Who else has seen it?" Another pause. His shoulders stiffened, his face draining of all color. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. "No, this can't happen. We need to control the damage." A bitter chuckle escaped me. Ethan turned sharply. "You think this is funny?" I shook. "I think it's overdue." He ended the call, gripping the phone so hard his knuckles turned white when he finally met my gaze again. There was something new in his eyes. Defeat for the first time, Ethan Murphy had lost. I took a slow step forward, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Did you really think I wouldn't fight back?" I asked, my voice softer now, almost pitying. He swallowed hard, but he had no answer. The mighty, untouchable Ethan Murphy brought to his knees by the very woman he had underestimated. I could have left it at that. I could have walked away, let the wreckage crumble behind me without another word. But I wanted him to remember this moment for the rest of his life, so I leaned in once more, my voice barely above a whisper. "You said you had me right where you wanted me," I murmured. "But Ethan, darling, you never had me at all." And with that, I walked away, leaving him standing in the ruins of his own making. I walked out of that room without looking back, feeling the weight of my own liberation settle over me like a warm, intoxicating rush of victory. The air outside felt different, lighter, fresher, as if the universe itself had been waiting for this moment, for Ethan's world to finally collapse under the weight of his own deceit, for the first time in years. I was free, but freedom didn't mean the game was over. Not yet. I reached the lobby of our building, my heels clicking against the polished floor, and pulled out my phone. Ethan was still upstairs, probably pacing, probably trying to come up with some desperate attempt at damage control. But there was no fixing this. His name, Liam's name, it was all over the internet now. And the fallout had only just begun. A new notification popped up, breaking news. High-profile investment firm under scrutiny, following internal scandal leak. I clicked the link. There was the first real blow, a full article detailing the suspicious activities within Ethan and Liam's company, pieced together with anonymous tips and financial discrepancies that had been hidden for years. The article didn't name them outright, not yet, but anyone who worked in their circle would know I had made sure of that. I scrolled down, watching comments flood in, speculations growing, people piecing together the puzzle faster than I expected. Then another message: "Liam, what did you do?" I smiled, then locked my phone. I wasn't going to waste my time on Liam's panic. He had spent years treating me like an afterthought, assuming I was just a shadow in Ethan's life. But he knew now, didn't he? Knew that the woman he had mocked, belittled, and whispered about behind her back had just pulled the ground from beneath him. I stepped outside and inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. It felt good. It felt earned. Then my phone rang. I didn't even need to look at the screen. I knew it would be Ethan. I let it ring once, twice, by the fourth time. I answered. Silence. Then his voice, low, sharp, teetering on the edge of desperation. I closed my eyes for a moment, savoring it. The way my name left his lips. No longer filled with arrogance or entitlement. No longer spoken like, "He owned me. What do you want, Ethan?" His breathing was uneven. "We need to talk." "We talked already," I said, my tone almost too casual. "Back in that room, unless you weren't listening, you know. That's not what I mean." I glanced around, watching as people bustled by, oblivious to the chaos unfolding in his world. "I really don't have time for this," I murmured. "Ava, please, that word. Please." How many times had I begged for his attention? How many times had I swallowed my pride, told myself I was overthinking it, told myself I was being too sensitive. And now here he was, the man who once stood so tall, unraveling in real time. I let the silence stretch, let him feel the weight of it. "Everything is falling apart." He admitted, his voice tight. Liam is panicking the company. There's an internal investigation now. I don't know what you did, but I cut him off. Oh, Ethan, I said, smiling as I repeated the words he once said to me. You could do better than this. He sucked in a sharp breath. This isn't a joke. I know, I said. It's justice. You're going to regret this, he snapped, that desperate edge sharpening into anger. I laughed softly. That's where you're wrong. The only regret I have is not doing this sooner. More silence. Then his voice dropped into something almost broken. Did you ever love me? The question caught me off guard for a moment. I considered lying. I considered telling him no, that it had all been a facade, that he had never mattered, but that would have been too easy. And the truth was far worse. I did. I admitted I loved you more than you ever deserved. His breathing hitched, and that I added, my voice steady, unyielding, is why I'm done. I ended the call before he could speak. It was over, but not for Liam. I turned and walked toward my next destination, a coffee shop, just a few blocks away. Inside, waiting at a corner table, was a man dressed in a sharp suit, a laptop open in front of him. He glanced up as I approached, nodding in acknowledgement. You did well, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I took a seat, folding my hands in my lap. Is it enough? His lips curved into a slow smirk. More than enough, I exhaled. Good. We sat in silence for a moment before he slid a folder toward me. This is everything you asked for. Liam's financials, his personal accounts, his hidden investments. I opened the folder, scanning the contents. It was worse than I thought, he chuckled, watching my reaction. You want the final blow? I met his gaze. Yes, then I suggest you drop this where it'll do the most damage. I snapped the folder shut. I know just the place. Liam had spent years trying to tear me down, feeding Ethan's arrogance, whispering in his ear. Like a parasite, he thought he was untouchable. He wasn't. The next morning, the headlines changed. Breaking internal corruption, uncovered executive under federal investigation. Liam's name was right there in the first paragraph. Ethan was mentioned by association. I sipped my coffee as I read through the article, watching the world react in real time. Their friends, their colleagues, their investors, by one they began to distance themselves, cutting ties, issuing statements by noon. Liam had called me 4 times. I didn't answer by evening. Ethan's number appeared again. I blocked it. The reckoning had come, and it had come swiftly. The last message I received that night was from an unknown number and known. You ruined us. I stared at it for a long moment before typing back, Mayo, you ruined yourselves. Then I turned off my phone, and for the first time in years, I slept soundly. The morning after everything unraveled, I woke up to silence, not the heavy, suffocating kind I had endured for years. The silence of being ignored, belittled, made to feel invisible. No, this was a different kind, a peaceful stillness, the kind that followed a storm after it had ripped through everything in its path, leaving only truth behind. I sat up in bed, stretching my body lighter than it had felt in years. No more waking up with the nagging weight of wondering if today would be the day I finally saw the truth about Ethan. I had already seen it, had already exposed it for the world to witness, and now there was nothing left but the ruins of his own making. Reaching for my phone, I scrolled through the latest updates. The headlines were relentless: Liam caught in financial scandal, facing legal investigation. Ethan Murphy under scrutiny. Company stocks plummet amidst internal crisis. Every article, every comment thread, every discussion was a confirmation that the power Ethan and Liam had once wielded was slipping through their fingers. The people who had once admired them were now distancing themselves, turning their backs, pretending they had never been allies. Ethan, he had disappeared. I checked my messages. No new calls, no texts. The silence was telling. He was still reeling, still trying to figure out how everything had collapsed so quickly. But there was nothing left for him to salvage. A soft knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. I stood wrapping my robe around myself and opened it. It was Emily. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her, eyes scanning my face carefully. You okay? I exhaled a slow breath, nodding. Better than okay, she smirked, crossing her arms. I'd say so. You basically just burned your cheating ex-husband's empire to the ground and made sure his snake of a best friend went down with him. That's not just okay, that's legendary, I chuckled, shaking my head. It wasn't about revenge, not really. Emily raised an eyebrow. No, I paused, considering. No, it was about truth, about making sure they faced consequences for once in their lives. They always thought they were untouchable, like they could lie, cheat, manipulate, and no one would ever hold them accountable. Her expression softened, and now they know what it feels like to be powerless. She studied me for a long moment before nodding in approval. So what's next? The question lingered in the air for so long. My life had revolved around Ethan, around making him happy, around trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect woman for a man who never deserved me. And when I discovered his betrayal, my focus shifted to exposing the truth, to making sure he didn't walk away unscathed. But now I was free. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the city skyline through the window. I don't know. I admitted for the first time in a long time, I don't have a plan. And I think I'm okay with that. Emily grinned, plopping down beside me. Well, I think a fresh start is exactly what you need. Fresh start. The words settled into my chest, warm and unfamiliar, a concept I had never let myself fully embrace before, but now with Ethan's absence and the weight of his deception finally lifted, the idea of starting over didn't feel scary, felt exciting. Emily nudged me. You could do anything, go anywhere, no more. Looking over your shoulder, no more lies, just you doing whatever you want for the first time in forever. I exhaled a soft laugh, shaking my head. That sounds nice, he shot me a look. It sounds necessary. Listen, you've spent years building your life around Ethan. It's time to build. One for yourself, and if you need any help? She smirked. I happen to know a thing or two about reinvention. I smiled at her. You always do. The thought of leaving everything behind, of stepping away from the wreckage and moving forward was liberating. I didn't need to stay and watch Ethan's downfall. That part was already in motion. He had made his choices, and now he would have to live with them later that afternoon. I checked my email, scanning through various unread messages, most of them from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Colleagues, acquaintances, even strangers who had somehow heard about what had happened and wanted to reach out. But one message stood out. It was from E. I hesitated before opening it. Subject, please, AA. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I need to try. You won, I get it. You wanted me to feel the way you felt. And now I do. Everything is gone. Liam is done. The company is falling apart. I lost everything, but what I regret the most is losing. You. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it, but I need you to know that not all of it was a lie. Not all of it was a game. I loved you, Ava. In my own way I did. I just wish I had realized it before it was too late. I stared at the words, my chest tight, not because I missed him, not because his regret meant anything to me now, but because it was the first time I had ever seen Ethan admit he was wrong. The first time he had ever acknowledged the depth of what he had done. But it didn't change anything. I closed the email and hit delete. It was over, and I was finally ready to move forward that night. I booked a one-way ticket out of the city, a new destination, a new life waiting for me. I wasn't running away. I was stepping into something better, something I had created for myself. And as I packed my bags, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning.